This video will walk you through how to use the News Minimal Lower Third MoGarts from Motion Array. These are the options that we have in this News Minimal Lower Thirds download. You can always look at Motion Array so that you can find all of the additional options. On the very front here, you'll see all of the different graphics that we have to choose from. You'll download the lower third templates from Box. So just go over to the News Minimal Lower Thirds and go ahead and download those. These are zipped folders, so once it downloads, you're going to need to unzip it. So it's in my downloads folder here, and I'm just going to double click to unzip. And when you open it up, there's lots of different resources. So first you need to make sure that you have the font downloaded. So double click on this, and this is going to take you to Font Squirrel so that you can download the Montserrat font. The next thing is a help folder in case you need tutorials or any other help using this. And then the last folder is all of the files that you can watch examples of here. So all of these are individual MoGart files. We don't need to install all of these MoGarts, and this should hopefully help make our computers work a little faster if we pick the main 2 or 3 that we're going to focus on. So I'm going to show you a couple examples of what those would look like. Here's an example of a lower third for a person's name. It animates on like this. There's a tab at the top, and then it's the person's name and perhaps like a Twitter handle. This is one version of the lower third, and here's like a headline lower third. And these are helpful because they animate on and off, but they also have a solid background, and so that'll make the text a little bit easier to read. So here's how you would install that into Premiere Pro. The first MoGart lower third, number 1, is this one right here. And then the other one we're going to use is the second one, and we might use the other MoGarts for different instances, but let's just start with number 1. When you're in Premiere Pro, go to your Essential Graphics and make sure that it usually default opens on Browse, but if you've been editing, you just need to make sure you click Browse. Over here on the very bottom right, it should say Install Motion Graphics Template. You may have to scroll to the bottom to reach yours, but mine is right here, and then you just click on it. And then you're going to locate these MoGarts that you just downloaded, and you're just going to install one at a time because you don't need to install all of them, and hopefully this will make everything work a little faster. So locate the News Lower Third 1 MoGart and then hit open. I've already installed that, and so once you've installed it, it'll populate here in this menu. You can search, the word these are called the News Minimal Lower Thirds. You can always search for that, or you can just scroll. It should be like an alphabetical order and find it that way. So if you're scrolling, you can see this is the News Lower Third 1, and I've also done it the same thing to the News Lower Third 2. When I'm adding a lower third to my timeline, I just grab it and then drop it onto my timeline like this. Sometimes it takes a few minutes to load. The thing you'll notice when you first hover over it, if you're editing in like a 1080 sequence like this, these lower thirds are 4K. So you may not see it pop up on the screen. So you're going to want to scale it to frame size by right-clicking and then go to Scale to Frame Size. So scale to frame size, and then you'll see it pop up. The other thing is that this defaults in this red color, and we're going to want to customize that to be blue so it's consistent with our look and our branding. So over in the Edit section, you kind of worked in Browse and you go over to Edit. You're going to have these options. So you can go ahead and just open these up. We don't need to change the position or the scale. This is going to allow you to adjust this text here. So like for headlines, for example, maybe you would write coming up. The main thing to keep in mind is that if you type in lowercase letters and then you click out here, you can see it's in lowercase. We do want all of our text for lower thirds to be in uppercase, so either you could delete it, or if you wrote coming up or something like that, you could always use these options down here to change it to all caps. So there's a couple ways to do that. But just make sure that these are in all capital letters. The next part here is the text to settings, and then this is where you are going to type some kind of headline or some kind of lower third information here. This is the lower third that's good for like a longer lower third description. So this is not something you'd necessarily use if all you were trying to do is convey somebody's name and their title. That would be a slightly different lower third. So you would type something in here, for example, Parkland parents shaming cities for gun violence. And that's as long as you probably want it to be. You want to make sure that your action safe margins, these right here, are on so that your text never goes beyond this action safe, because then it could get cut off on people's TVs. Here's another example: star power behind Pulse Memorial, President's Day, Trump impeachment investigation. So that's kind of the way that you would write, for an example, a headline lower third. The next thing we want to do after you've been able to type all this information out is change the color. So if you scroll down, the text color defaults to white, and this color defaults to white, and that's great. The only thing we want to change is this red. So this is the color. We click on red, and then we can enter a hex code. So if you double click there and then just include this hex code, it's 2288D4. That is the exact shade of blue that we use, and then you hit OK. And then you see that this turns blue. So the main thing you need to do is scale to frame size, type in the text, and change the hex color for this blue color. And then this one will animate on. If it's up for too long, you could always make it end before it animates off. So the next thing I want to show you is this kind of a lower third. So this would animate on like this. So we'll go back to our browse menu and find the news minimal lower third. That's this one. And I'm just going to throw it here as an example. I'm going to scale to frame size. And then I'm going to add the text and stuff. As you notice on this example of Chuck Schumer, it's like pretty busy and hard to read. So this may not be the time that you're going to add this, but perhaps if we had like a different, like let's say this interview here, for example, needed a lower third, we could put it on top of this guy who's talking, and that would work really well. And so let's edit this lower third. When you open it and you go to edit, you'll notice there are many more options than the headline lower third, so don't be overwhelmed. You just want to open it up and see, instead of breaking news, let's say this story, for example, is the Parkland shooting. So if that's how we're branding the story in our show, and that's what the stinger says, and that's what the story is about, then you could, in theory, put like a branded thing here. You could write, if we were doing breaking news, you could write breaking news. If it was new information, you could write new information. And so that's where that would go. If you didn't have any kind of branding, you would just delete it, and then this box just disappears on its own, which is great. So the next one here is this text 1 shape. So the text 1 is what we were just looking at. So you don't actually need to change this one unless you have some kind of text in there, like let's say it was breaking news. Then we would want to go into this text 1 color and then change the hex code to match our blue color. But in this instance, you know, we could keep it there as an example, but you don't necessarily have to have that. The next one is the person's name. So that's where the person's name would go. And then this would be the color, and it's white and black, so we're happy with that, so you don't have to change that. The third setting is the description. So this could be the person's title. It could be, you know, protester, it could be USF student, whatever the person's title is, you would write that there. If it's a reporter and or an anchor, you might want to put their Twitter handle or something, or maybe Tampa for like where they're reporting out of or something. The last thing you need to change is text 3 shape setting. You would go here and then you would just insert this hex code and hit OK. And then that's all you got to do. So you don't need to adjust any of these other things. Keep them this way so that they're consistent. This will animate on like this. And that's it. So those are the two main ones that we're going to use. But again, if you see a reason to use these other ones, you know how to install each MoGart individually. They're pretty small files, so we hope that this will help make everybody's editing workflow a little bit easier.